Hey there, everyone. Michael A. Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology with next week's astrology for the week of September 15th to September 21st, 2021. I'm really excited to dive into the astrology of the week ahead. I don't know if you can hear, but at this moment, I technically have no voice. My voice went missing a couple days ago, and I think today is probably better than it has been for the last 2 days, but I'm still struggling very, very much. So if it sounds like I have a sore throat, it's because I do have a sore throat. But all the same, we're here to bring you the astrology that you know and love right here on Oraculos Astrology. Now, as all of you know, this weekend is our big weekend because this weekend is the start of our professional astrologers diploma program, which begins tomorrow, September 14th, 2024. And we're going to be diving in tomorrow with a free community offering, which is our Foundations of Classical Astrology open house. Now, a few weeks ago, we had our actual open house where you were able to come online and talk to me about anything you wanted to talk about as far as the education that we offer here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. And tomorrow, we're inviting you into the Oraculos classroom so that you can see and learn and figure out just what it is we do at Oraculos and how that ties into your greater astrological unfolding. So tomorrow is going to be a day of, I want to say, master classes. We're going to have a masterclass extravaganza because after I finish the FOCA open house, we're going to invite all of you who studied at Oraculos before at our Practice of Concrete Astrology 1 level to join us tomorrow for the Practice of Concrete Astrology number 2, which is our medical astrology semester. So tomorrow is going to be an open house extravaganza, and I cannot wait to have you all come on down and join us here at the Oraculos School of Astrology so that you can see what the first weekend of our professional astrologers diploma program looks like. So if you haven't already signed up for our professional astrologers diploma program open house, which is tomorrow, then please do check out our website at www.oraculosastrology.com. Check out our upcoming events page underneath our education tab so that you can get your free seat in our open house tomorrow. What I'm going to be teaching tomorrow is the exact same content that we teach people at Oraculos every single year at the beginning of our professional astrologers diploma program. It's not going to be a day of just sitting down and listening to people say their names and where they're from. We are actually going to hit the ground running tomorrow in the way that I feel that people should start learning astrology. And from year to year, that changes for me. But tomorrow, I have something very special in store for all of you. So if you want to join us in this experience, why not join us in this experience? You're going to get a free masterclass with me tomorrow, as well as Sunday. The entire first weekend of our program is going to be free of charge for those of you who might be still sitting on the fence as it relates to joining us for the entire program. So once again, please join us tomorrow, September 14th, for the beginning of our professional astrologers diploma program and our free open house in which you can see exactly what we do the first weekend of this program to set people up for excellence within their astrological journey. Now, with that being said, I don't think that there's anything else I have to say, save for the fact that, as you all know, we also have our cosmobiology or our medical astrology retreat coming up here in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm so excited to see so many Oraculos students signing up for it. And I'm also excited for those of you who haven't been studying at Oraculos in any official capacity, still signing up for it. It really warms my heart. So for those of you who want to join us in our medical astrology intensive, in which we're going to be diving into a week of me hammering out for you exactly how we deal with the topic of medical astrology at the Oraculos School of Astrology, then you definitely want to sign up for this program, which is going to be right here live in Boston, Massachusetts, from October 27th to November 2nd, 2024. I'm going to be diving into the 78 medical astrology planetary pairs so that you can know what to expect from a medical astrology perspective with all 78 of the planetary pairs. This is the first time in my knowledge that this is ever going to be done in an intensive, and you definitely don't want to miss out on it. We're also going to be hammering out all of the ways in which planetary combinations can manifest in a morbificant way or in a way that causes illness within the birth chart. We're also going to be taking a look at our old and tried and true version of the zodiacal man, in which we're going to be talking about the various zones of the body and how those zones of the body correspond with actual or with the actual physiology of the body. And I'm going to be sharing with you my divergence from that old school medical astrology model so that I can show you how to use this notion of the zodiacal man within the context of your own medical astrology practice in a way where you don't get crippled by this zodiac situation. Because as all of you know, we tend to be very zodiac heavy in the West as far as astrology is concerned. So I'm going to teach you how to take your looking at a chart to a planetary level where you focus on the planet and where you bring in the zodiacal correspondences with the anatomy of the human body in a way that actually makes the most sense. So if this is something that you want to dive into, if you have always been interested in medical astrology and you can't wait to bring that into your practice, then join us this October 27th to November 2nd right here in Boston, Massachusetts for our first ever live anything, but also for our first ever medical astrology intensive. I cannot wait to host you in the city that I love, and I look forward to you joining us here. All right, awesome. So that's enough of the housekeeping. Now we are going to dive into, hey there, Kenya. Hey there, Lisa. Hey there, Karen. Hey, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all here. Now we're going to dive into, there are two things happening. On the one hand, we have the partial lunar eclipse coming up. That's going to be on September 17th. And so we're going to talk about that. But we're also going to just talk about the astrology for the week ahead in general. So keep this slide up on the screen, Anna. I'm going to bring up the chart so that people can see what we're looking at for the week ahead. And also, like you all know, I've recently taken the stance, and it's not me taking any stance, it's that I've recently been told, hey, Michael, you don't have to talk about every single planetary combination. And that has been truly a lifesaver because, as you all know, I tend to want to talk about everything. And I was recently given permission not to do that. So life is feeling great over here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. All right, so let's dive into two of the top planetary combinations that we see happening today. The very first one that is noteworthy for me from a trans-Neptunian perspective, as you all know, the trans-Neptunian perspective is the Uranian astrology perspective, is that we have Mars in an opposition with Cupido. Here we have Mars at 6 degrees of Cancer in an opposition with Cupido at 6 degrees of Capricorn. That's happening on September 15th at 2:16 a.m. And the next big thing, okay, fine. Maybe I'm going to talk about a couple of things because the next big thing happening today is also going to be Jupiter in a sesquiquadrate relationship with Apollon, which is happening at 3:40 a.m. EDT. Here's Jupiter at 20 degrees of Gemini, and we have Apollon over here at 5 degrees of Scorpio. And then finally, we have Venus parallel Saturn at 1:11 p.m. EDT. Here's our Venus parallel Saturn down here. So let's dive into it. Mars Cupido. Cupido is the Uranian astrology planet for the family. And Mars Cupido is the combination of the working family or working towards something that serves the common good of everyone concerned. Mars Cupido also has to do with working artistically with others or working towards a peaceful outcome. So all of these things manifest when we have Mars Cupido. And so today might be a day when we're hearing a lot being manifest within the world at large as far as work being made towards greater humanitarian effort. It's something that we actually love to see. Now, the other thing, the Jupiter Apollon happening on this day with the Jupiter sesquiquadrate Apollon. Here we have Jupiter at 20 degrees Gemini and Apollon at 5 degrees of Scorpio. The Jupiter-Apollon combination is the combination that signifies the circulation of wealth within the world at large. Apollon has to do with circulation and this idea of far and wide and internationality. All of these things are what we find in Apollon. Apollon has to do with success and glory and business and trade and commerce. And Jupiter, as we know, has to do with wealth. So the combination of Jupiter and Apollon has to do with this emphasis on wealth and trade and commerce on this day, all of which is very wonderful. So if you want to take advantage of this day from the perspective of your own trading, it can be a wonderful day to do that. Now, the last thing happening on this day that I think is noteworthy is that we do have Venus in a parallel relationship with Saturn, and that's happening around 1:11 p.m. EDT. And here we see them on the screen. Venus and Saturn in combination has to do with the separation of love or sorrow in love or the end of love or a love that can't make it. Within astrology, Saturn has to do with the denial of anything. So Saturn is going to be the planet that gets in our way, that brings us challenges, that denies our ability to manifest things in the ways that we want to manifest them. And if Venus is having to do with love and our impulse towards love and romance, then the Venus-Saturn combination is oftentimes going to be associated with the negation of love possibilities within our lives. Or sometimes, if we find this within the chart of someone, this can also indicate that that person is so keen or so capable of performing their duties in love that they don't actually know how to step into loving space in a way that's actually soft and emotional and warm and wet and moist, and that actually has the ability to feel like something that is based on feelings, basically. So Venus and Saturn can sometimes be something that steals the joy out of life, and it's also something that can steal the joy out of love. So if you're a Venus Saturn person and you've had that experience, just know that we can sometimes get so caught up in the duties of what it means to love someone that we can forget what it actually means to love someone. And this Venus-Saturn combination is a reminder to all of us that love goes beyond what we can do, but it's also a matter of how we act and how we show up for another person from an emotional perspective. All right, now moving on to the next day, which is going to be Monday, the 16th of September, 2024. What's going on in the sky today? Today we have the moon going void, of course, after she makes a square aspect to Uranus at 1:03 a.m. EDT. Then she's going to ingress into Pisces at 5:38 a.m. EDT, which we love to see. But the big one that we have going on today is going to be the Mars square the nodes, and that's happening at 5:54 p.m. EDT. Mars square the nodes, area of Mars at 6 degrees of Cancer, and we have the nodes at 7 degrees Aries, 7 degrees Libra. Mars is at the northern bending. The bendings are the two squares of the nodes. So if we have the north node in Aries, we go around in zodiacal order until we find the first square, and that would be called the northern bending. Similarly, if we're starting with the south node from 7 degrees of Libra, which I don't have on the screen, but it's at 7 degrees of Libra, then we go around in zodiacal order from Libra to Scorpio to Sagittarius to Capricorn, then we'll find our southern bending in Capricorn. These are the bendings. The northern bending has been associated with a crossroads of opportunity within our lives, whereas the southern bending has been associated with a crossroads of sacrifice. Be that as it may, from a Uranian astrology perspective, Mars node has to do with our working connections, which is why within Uranian astrology, the Mars node midpoint is one of the midpoints that we look at as far as determining what a person's vocation in this lifetime will be. Even though, as many of you know, my approach to vocational astrology tends to be more than a one and done deal. My approach to vocational astrology tends to be, let's look at this entire chart and let's see what strengths and proficiencies this entire chart gives this person. Because oftentimes when it comes to vocational astrology, we as astrologers get stuck on this notion that the sign on the cusp of my 10th house is going to indicate my career, or the planets in my 10th house are going to indicate my career. And while the planets in the 10th house do have the ability to give some ideas surrounding what you're going to aspire to in this lifetime, we still have to have a full and a comprehensive understanding of who you are in your entirety as a person, because the wholeness of who you are is who shows up in a career capacity for whatever job you might be pursuing, not just the sign on the cusp of my 10th house is blah, blah, therefore I'm going to be a blah, blah, you know? So we have Mars node. Mars and Node in combination. Hey there, Melanie Hall. Hey there, Becky Bishop. Hey there, Babette. So Mars and Node in combination has to do with our working connections. Mars has to do with work, and the Node has to do with our connections. Therefore, today can be a wonderful day to launch out into some work project with people who are part of your team, or if you want to create a team of people surrounding a particular work idea that you have. Today, the 16th of September, is a wonderful day for that because there's a lot of impetus in the air for us to work with each other. On this day, we also have Mercury in a contraparallel relationship with Venus, which is nice because the Mercury Venus combination means that we also not only do we want to work together, but we also know how to talk to each other in a way that feels kind and loving and compassionate, and in a way that honors the various gifts that we all bring to the table as team members. So it's a wonderfully productive work day on the 16th of September, and it's something that we want to use. Also, we have the moon ingressing into Pisces on this day, and we know that when the moon is in any water sign, it indicates a period of fertility. So the moon ingressing into Pisces is something that we love to see and something that we love to talk about. Now we're going to move on to the 17th of September, which is going to be Tuesday, the 17th of September. Tuesday, the day of Tu, or the day of Mars, is what that means. On Tuesday, the 17th of September, we have some interesting planetary combinations happening in the sky. Most interesting of all is going to be the lunar eclipse, which is going to be happening at 10:34 p.m. EDT. I'm going to talk to you all about the lunar eclipse and all about eclipses in general right after we're done this week's forecast. But beyond that, what is happening in the sky today, which is pretty noteworthy for me, is that we have the sun in a contraparallel relationship with Neptune. Here we see the sun contraparallel Neptune at the bottom of our screen, and that's going to be happening at 7:05 p.m. EDT. And later on, we also have Mercury in the sesquiquadrate relationship with Pluto. That's going to be happening at 10:34 p.m. EDT. Here we have Mercury at 13 degrees of Virgo in a sesquiquadrate relationship with Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. Sun contraparallel Neptune is interesting because it has to do with a day of disappointment. The Sun releases the day, and Neptune corresponds with disappointment. Sun Neptune also has to do with combinations that weaken our vitality, in the same way that disappointment weakens our vitality. There's one thing about being disappointed where it makes you feel as if you really don't want to show up for anything. And in the tarot, I'm reminded of the card, the Four of Cups, where we see the guy sitting down underneath the tree and he has his arms crossed and he's looking at his four cups and he's being presented another cup. But he has no care for that other cup because within him, there's a sense of, I've seen this all before. And when we're disappointed, we can sometimes be in a space of, hey, I've seen this all before. I've seen how this plays out. I don't necessarily have the vitality to be disappointed again because in general, I feel like I'm a low energy person. Sun Neptune is a combination that metaphysically, in the words of Dr. William Davidson, it puts holes within our aura. And so, on a personal level, Sun Neptune can be associated with a susceptibility to illness or a susceptibility to infection, or us having a predisposition towards disease in general, which is why Sun Neptune is something that we love to look for from a medical astrology perspective. On the note of medical astrology, and you could bring me back, Anna, on the note of medical astrology, technically speaking, we're not allowed to say medical astrology as astrologers, or else the algorithm, it prevents the amount of people who have access to our content, because apparently the algorithm isn't used to or isn't accustomed to those words being used together in a YouTube video. This is something that we recently found out. So the way to override that is that if this is content that you enjoy receiving, then please take a moment, go down below and like this video. And you can also comment on the video, because the more engagement these videos get on YouTube, then the more it lets the algorithm know that, hey, this content is actually something that people want to hear, and this content is actually something that people personally subscribe to, whether or not it's politically correct content, it still lets the algorithm know that this content is something that people personally subscribe to. So if you haven't done so already, please go down below, hit the like button, also subscribe to the Oraculos podcast wherever you find this on the internet, so that you could help nudge the technological gods along and allow or help the gods that be or the powers that be share the Oraculos podcast with a wider listenership. Now, moving on and talking once again about the Sun Neptune combination, it's something that we look for within a medical astrology context because Sun Neptune denotes, what does it denote? Sun Neptune is denoting this fundamental or this foundational weakness as far as our aura is concerned, or this foundational sense of us not being able to actively support ourselves energetically. Neptune, as you all have heard me say before, it creates holes within the aura, but it's also one of our cosmic toilet bowls. As you all know, the cosmic toilet bowls, as far as I'm concerned, are going to be the South Node, which is a cosmic toilet bowl, the 12th house, and Neptune to a very large degree. These are cosmic toilet bowls, which means that these are things that have a foundational depleting emphasis and a depleting energy on us in general. So when we find Sun Neptune within the birth chart of a person from a medical astrology perspective, one of the things that we're wanting to know is, one, are the two of them in hard aspect with each other? Because we know that as far as concrete astrology is concerned, the hard aspects correspond far more with the manifestation of concrete events than the soft aspects ever will. This is something that we teach at the Oraculos School of Astrology, and this is something that we teach very early. And if you want to join us tomorrow in our Oraculos open house, where we're going to show you what's going on in the Oraculos classroom, we can bring that up on the screen, Anna, where we're going to be showing you what's going on in the Oraculos classroom. You can join us tomorrow and take the first 2 classes of our professional astrologers diploma program free of charge, so that you can see what the Oraculos class experience is like, and so you could also see how that feels to you in general. Because one of the things that people always ask is, hey, how is this possible? We're meeting twice a week. What's going to come out of this experience? But I've been teaching astrology for a very long time, and independent of that, I've been a teacher for a very long time in general, and I love to teach and I know how to teach. And one of the things that we're going to be doing tomorrow is teaching, basically. So if you want to join us in that vortex, you can do so free of charge by checking out our website, the upcoming events page on our website, which is underneath the event, which is underneath the education tab, and join us. It's my gift to you so that you can see whether or not this is the place that you want to grow as an astrologer. So Sun Neptune, once again, challenging combination from a medical astrology perspective. It's a challenging combination in general. And when a person has that, we want to see, are the two of them in hard aspect relationship with each other? Because hard aspects correspond with the manifestation of concrete events. And I used to think that was only a Uranian astrology thing, but it turns out that every astrologer who is kind of worth their weight in gold feel the same way. A soft aspect of Jupiter to your ascendant will not correspond with when you make your big whirlwind adventure travel, but a hard aspect of Jupiter to your ascendant will. So the hard aspects correspond more with the manifestation of concrete events, and soft aspects too. So as far as medical astrology is concerned, we are primarily concerned with hard aspects because we care about the concrete realities of a person's physical health. So when the Sun and Neptune are in hard aspect relationship with each other, we also want to know what sign of the zodiac is that Sun in. Because one, not only does that denote an overall weakness to a person's vitality, but it also denotes a specific weakness to the part of the body that's corresponding with the sign in which we find that Sun. So for example, if a person is having Sun in Libra in opposition with Neptune, that can correspond with a weakness of the lumbar vertebrae and the weakness of the lower region of the spine in general. but it can also correspond with a weakness in the kidney's ability to function. So it can be weak kidneys, and it can represent a weakness in that region of the body, the lower lumbar vertebrae, the sacrum. Sun Neptune can also correspond, Sun Neptune with the Sun in Libra can also correspond with an instability within the bones, an instability within the skeletal structure of the lumbar vertebrae and the sacrum, as well as the pelvis. So these are some of the things that we're seeing, because a planet will always afflict in alignment with the nature of that planet. So how does Venus afflict? Venus afflicts by causing laziness and causing a lack of tonicity. How does Jupiter afflict? Jupiter afflicts by creating excess growth. How does Pluto afflict? Pluto afflicts by creating abnormal growth or abnormal trauma or some other story of abnormality with that particular part of the body. How does Mercury afflict? Mercury afflicts by creating nervous tension, which is why very often when a person is having Moon in hard aspect with Mercury, even if that combination isn't afflicted by anything else, Moon Mercury can correspond with diarrhea and other digestive health issues, because the Moon Mercury has to do with digestive nervousness or nervous tension that's directly impacting the gut. So planets will always afflict in harmony with the nature of that planet. So for example, if we have the Sun in Libra in a square relationship with Mars, then Sun in Libra square Mars will have to do with inflammation, irritation, and injury to the lower region of the spine, to the lumbar vertebrae of the spine. So whereas Sun Neptune with the Sun in Libra might correspond with instability of the lumbar vertebrae, Sun in Libra in hard aspect with the Mars is going to correspond with inflammation and injury of that region of the spine. So we have to understand, I think is the point in general. Now, moving back to the chart where we went down the Sun Neptune rabbit hole, because there's a lot going on in terms of the Sun Neptune in general. And those are some of the pointers as to what it means. Let's bring back the chart on the screen, please. So that is the Sun and Neptune combination. The other combination that we have happening today is the Mercury in the sesquiquadrate relationship with Pluto. Pluto is always going to represent abnormality, abnormal growth, abnormal trauma, and there's another abnormal something that my medical astrology students know. But today I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so forgive me for not knowing all the things I usually know. But abnormal growth and abnormal trauma are two of the things that we oftentimes find with the Pluto. So today, Mercury Pluto, Mercury has to do with what we're communicating, and the Pluto has to do with we're communicating something that is having a very powerful effect, and it's having an abnormally strong effect because maybe we're communicating about something that is potently abnormally challenging on this day, September 17th. When you add to that the fact that we also have the lunar eclipse happening on this day, it is turning this day, September 17th, into a veritable shit show. So all of these combinations are challenging from the perspective of the fact that eclipses, traditionally speaking, tend to be malefic. Also, Sun Neptune is malefic because Neptune, the modern planets in general, tend to be malefic. It's a crazy day as far as days are concerned. And I'm going to talk more about the eclipse later on after we're done with this forecast. Now, moving on with Wednesday, September 18th, moving on to the next day. I feel so great because I was told recently that I don't need to talk about every planetary combination. And that, for me, is like music to my ears. So of all the things happening in the sky on September 18th, I'm going to talk to you about one of them. Why? Because I need to rest my vocal folds. That's why. Speaking of vocal folds, as all of you know, as a part of my constant fascination with the physical body, I recently attended a human dissection course, and I'm going to be going back again in October to yet another one. And a part of what I was responsible for doing, you can bring me back, was I was responsible for dealing with the trachea of the subjects that we got. So I had the trachea, the lungs, and the heart. I also had the stomach and the liver and the gallbladder and the kidneys and the spleen and the pancreas and the small intestines and the large intestines. And truthfully, retrospectively, when I think about it, I wonder what everybody else had because I was on a table all by myself, hogging all of this person's internal organs. And I left everybody else with the, I guess muscles and bones are fascinating. But anyway, I'm a glutton when it comes to science. But oh my goodness, I'm obviously also a glutton when it comes to mucus. But I had all of these internal organs on the table with me, and I was fascinated by the trachea in particular, and by this whole concept of the larynx, because when you see it in a medical textbook, you can't really make out what's going on when they talk about vocal folds. But I was able to cut this guy's trachea down the center and open it up and realize, oh my god, they're actually folds of tissue. Like, they literally fold. It's the same trachea, and it folds inside itself to create these two pairs of vocal folds, the true vocal folds and the false vocal folds. So it was quite fascinating to see that, because I thought that I would open his throat and see another structure there, but indeed it's literally just a continuation of the actual tissue of the trachea. I'm so fascinated by the human body. I'm so fascinated by medicine, and I'm so grateful because my most recent client, as you all know, I'm not seeing clients at the moment because I'm writing my next book, which is on medical astrology. But my most recent client was a doctor who teaches in a hospital. And she said to me, Michael, you just need to sit your little ass down and go to medical school, because all of this putzing around, it just doesn't make sense. And we spoke about it for a bit. And she was like, look, the 8 years are going to go in any event. So today, when I was in the shower, where most of my good ideas come from, I was thinking to myself, I need to write this next book. I probably need to dedicate the next year to just writing all the books that are within me to write, so that come 2026, I can actually go to medical school in earnest. And hopefully at that point in time, I become more well known in the world. And, people buy the books, and those books put me through college. But that's my goal at the moment, to not continue to say that I'm a pre-med dropout, but to actually go back to school. So circa 2026, that's my plan, September 2026, to go back to medical school, or to resume my medical studies at a university level. So pray for me, and also give me all the best wishes that you have, so that we can get these books written between now and September 2026. So help us God. Anyway, coming back to the chart, and what else we have going on this day. Today we have Mercury in opposition with Saturn, and that's a big one. That's the biggest thing happening. Mercury opposite Saturn is something that, I mean, I like it, but maybe it's because I'm a dreary, depressive person, and that's why I like it. But Mercury Saturn has to do with heavy thoughts. It also has to do with very pragmatic thoughts. And as a non-Mercury Saturn person, because I'm not a Mercury Saturn person, but as a non-Mercury Saturn person, I sympathize with Mercury Saturn people, because Mercury Saturn people are oftentimes called Debbie Downers, because where everybody else sees a wonderful day to go out and have a wonderful time, the Mercury Saturn person is the only person who stays up at night watching the bad weather forecast. So they're the only person who knows in the crowd that there's a 60% chance that it's going to rain on that day. And they want everybody to know about it. And everybody feels like, oh my God, why don't you stop raining on our parade? But the Mercury Saturn person simply wants to point out for you what the problem is. I have a friend who, every 30 seconds in conversation with her, she says, the problem is. And that's a very Mercury Saturn thing. And she doesn't mean anything by it. She's a very wonderful person. But the problem is a foundational part of how she communicates, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it can be a very overwhelming, a very intensive thing. It can make me feel like I'm losing breath, like, it's cutting off my circulation, but she means well. And so if you're a Mercury Saturn person and you've been called a Debbie Downer, don't worry, you're not alone in the world. There are more people like you And the problem isn't you. But you could possibly do well to less highlight the problems and more highlight the good things. One of the other things with Mercury Saturn is that Saturn has to do with our tangible world, and Mercury has to do with the magic within our tongue. And the Bible says that both life and death exist within the power of the tongue. And so, this idea of speaking something into reality is a very Mercury Saturn concept. So the problem with being a Mercury Saturn person who's always highlighting that which is problematic about the world is that it can cause you to only see that which is problematic within the world. And because the universe listens to what you say, because your voice carries the gravity of Saturn himself, it causes your life to sometimes feel that much more heavier because your life becomes one of self-fulfilling prophecies. So start to say some good stuff, start to prophesy some good stuff in your life so that the impact of that Mercury Saturn isn't so cruel and so crippling. And that's all I have to say about the September 18th, because I am giving myself the freedom to only talk about one planetary combination a day. So help me God. Now we're going to move on to September 19th. It feels so nice to break the rules. Like I'm a very Saturnian person. I'm also a very Plutonian person. I have all the things in my chart that set me up for a life of hardship and misery. And so, this idea of being able to break the rules and only talk about one planetary aspect a day feels like the most reckless thing I've ever done in my entire life. So, I'm having a whale of a time over here. Like, I'm trembling with excitement because who would have known life could be this freeing? Next thing is on September the 19th. Oh my goodness, there's nothing happening in September the 19th at all. I feel like I want to go and pull out some soft aspects because I feel this obligation to be obligated to saying stuff. But apparently, I don't have to say anything. Can you imagine? I'm the person who never takes a vacation. So we're moseying on through past September 19th to September 20th. And what do we have happening in the sky on this date? On this day, we have a lot of stuff happening in the sky, but I'm only going to talk about one of them. So today, we have the sun making its opposition to Neptune, making its zodiacal opposition to Neptune. Here we see the sun at 28 degrees Virgo. Here we see Neptune at 28 degrees of Pisces. That's the sun making its zodiacal opposition to Neptune. Previously, we saw the sun in a contraparallel relationship with Neptune, but today we have the sun making its zodiacal opposition to Neptune. You might say, what's the difference between these? They're both important. One of the things I always tell our students at the Oraculos School of Astrology, you could bring me back. One of the things I often tell our students at the Oraculos School of Astrology. Okay, I'm seeing in the chat, both of my sons have Sun Neptune in their charts. That's very interesting. And I have thoughts about Sun Neptune in general. And I'm going to say those thoughts later. Because we also have Sun Neptune happening during this upcoming eclipse. Sun Neptune is going to be one of the aspects in this eclipse. Anyway, what was I talking about? One of the things I say to our students at Oraculos is that when you're looking at aspects, you have to look at a full spectrum of aspects. You have to look at the zodiacal aspects because the zodiacal aspects are basic schmasic. We need to know what the zodiacal aspects are. So today we have the sun opposite Neptune. Fine, we needed to know that. But we also need to know the non-zodiacal aspects. And of the non-zodiacal aspects, there are two types. There are the aspects by declination, which we call parallels and contraparallels. And there are mundane aspects, which we call parans. Paran, which we know is short for Paranatalanta. And all three of these are representing very important combinations that we need to prioritize within our astrology. Because sometimes you might have a wonderful Sun trine Neptune within your chart and not know why your dad is an alcoholic and why your husband is an alcoholic and why all the men you're attracted to in your life are alcoholics. Because you say, oh my God, look, I have this wonderful Sun Neptune trine. But when you look at it from the perspective of Parans, you don't have a Sun Neptune trine. You have a Sun Neptune mundane square because while your Sun was anti culminating, Neptune was setting. So the effect of that Sun Neptune isn't going to be the benefic trine that you're expecting. Yes, it is going to lead you to having a life full of drunken, unreliable men who probably also have other issues within their tissues that make them unsatisfying, probably even in the bedroom, because Sun Neptune has to do with impotency. And it particularly has to do with weak men or men who have no vitality at all. And sometimes the reason why those men aren't having vitality is because of things that they're doing to themselves, such as abusing alcohol, which I'm definitely not going to be doing this evening on account of the fact that I'm sick. Not that I'm a complete um whatever, but as far as the week goes, the weekend is usually the time that I reserve to, become that person, whichever person, but I'm not doing anything this evening. Anyway, moving along, that got very personal very quickly. So we're going to go back to the chart and I'm going to go back to the chart. So Sun Neptune is happening truly on this day, September 20th. Sun Neptune has to do with weak leadership as well. From a mundane perspective, Sun Neptune has to do with the king who is an idiot. When I think about Sun Neptune, I always think about the Emperor's New Clothes, where the Emperor was told by these con artists that they had this material that was so beautiful and so refined that only the most elite people could see it. And because nobody else wanted to look like a dumbass, they all said to the king, "Oh, wow, look at these fine invisible garments that you're wearing." And the idiot king went out into the world wearing these invisible garments. And it took a child saying, "That guy's butt naked," for everybody to snap out of the delusion of what they were witnessing. And it's crazy that sometimes that's necessary. Something recently happened this week in Oy vey. We're already there. Something recently happened this week in our family group chat where, every morning we say good morning to each other because that's like our family ritual. In the mornings, we say good morning to each other. And one member of my family says this thing that is strange, but I guess it's supposed to be an approximation of good morning. But it's not good morning. It's this very strange situation that just gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I'm like, dude, just say good morning. And and so my intrusive thoughts won. On which day was this? On Tuesday, my intrusive thoughts took over. And even though I knew what he meant to say, I messaged back in the family group chat and I was like, what does that even mean? And then my sister messaged me and she was like, Michael, do you even sit down to pray or contemplate the effects of your actions? But I'm the sort of person, I punch and I run. So I said, what does that mean? And I exited the family group chat and I haven't checked it back until today. And apparently the person gave some long, elaborate response about the slaves and how slavery did this and slavery did that. But that person has also started saying good morning in the family group chat since Wednesday. So I guess my efforts weren't in vain. Anyway, the point of the matter of all of this is that sometimes you need someone to like snap you out of your delirium so that you could actually realize how stupid you're being in the world at large. And Sun Neptune has the impact of making us all that much more gullible, but it also has the impact of making our leaders gullible. It has to do with weak, incompetent leadership within the world at large. So today, that might be something that we're hearing about. And I do think that this is something that we're going to be hearing about in general, since this is an active combination in the upcoming eclipse. So we're going to move on through to the next day, which is September the 21st. And September the 21st is Saturday, September the 21st. And on this day, what do we have happening in the sky? On this day, we have Mars. Of the things happening in the sky, I'm going to talk to you about the thing that I want to talk to you about because I'm living on the edge. God damn it. So on this day, we have Mars in a contra-parallel relationship with Pluto, and that's happening at 7:52 a.m. EDT. Mars Pluto, from a Uranian astrology perspective, and also from a cosmobiology perspective, you could bring me back. Mars Pluto has to do with amputation. It has to do with the forcible or the unnatural or the abnormal cutting. Mars has to do with cutting, and Pluto has to do with everything that is overly forceful, overly traumatic, overly abnormal. And so Mars Pluto has to do with forceful cutting. And I think that Mars Pluto by declination was in effect during uh during 1776, or the declaration of American independence or something. I think Mars Pluto was also in effect where we had this forcible cutting of the new world from the old world of Britain, basically. And so this Mars Pluto has to do with attaining one's aims through ruthless means. It's a very ruthless combination. And the problem with this combination, once again, I sound like a Debbie Downer, but the problem with this combination is that it's happening during this coming eclipse. Now, what we should know about eclipses, wonderful Melanie is saying that she has a twin sister that keeps her in check. We all need that person. My sister keeps me in check, you know? And I like to have people in my life who do that for me. I recently sent one of my greatest friends, Ellen Key Cepeda, in Nassau, Bahamas, this video link about being in a dysfunctional relationship. And because whatever, we send things to each other back and forth. And she was like, "Oh, are you sending this to me to describe your own dysfunctional relationship?" And I laughed and I laughed and I laughed, because sometimes we try to send things to people to prove a point to them, when in fact the point is actually a point that's being proven to us. So I love having people in my life who do that for me. My sister does that, Ellen does that, to a large degree the women in my life do that for me, and I'm very, very grateful. Anyway, moving on, talking about eclipses. No, keep me. Eclipses are something that are very important, traditionally speaking. Eclipses have to do with a period of great malevolence. That's what they've always meant throughout traditional astrology. And within the 21st century, because we don't like to use malevolence as a word, I don't know why. We don't like to use malevolence. We don't like to use malefic. The only mal thing we like to talk about is Maleficent, because she was played by Angelina Jolie. But every other type of mal we don't like to talk about. Malpractice, malnutrition. Anyway, malevolence. The eclipses have always been malevolent. And in traditional astrology, we tend to prioritize the solar eclipse because, as you all know, traditional astrology is a very patriarchal subject. And as a result of that, we tend to lean towards the sun for a lot of things. Now, I'm all about, dismantling the patriarchy. However, from a practical astrological perspective, where you have the solar eclipse landing within your chart is going to be a place that represents crisis for you within the next 6-month period. We don't see the solar eclipses, we don't see the lunar eclipses doing the same thing. The lunar eclipses do not seem to carry the same power as the solar eclipses. So when you go to an astrologer to talk to them about the eclipses and how they're impacting your chart, more than likely they're going to prioritize the solar eclipse as being an index for where crisis is going to manifest within your life during the next 6-month period than the lunar eclipse. So if you, like this person in the chat, has the eclipse landing on the moon in Pisces, be not thou dismayed, because the reality is that we tend to want to focus more on the solar eclipses than the lunar eclipses in general. Okay? So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it as far as next week's astrology is concerned. I hope that you had a wonderful time listening to next week's astrology, because now we're going to talk about the eclipse chart, because the eclipse chart is definitely a chart that we want to pay attention to, because eclipses are used to really indicate what's going to manifest within a particular location for the next 6-month period. Ay, Dios mío, let me take this off. Also, speaking about what's going to be manifesting in the next 6-month period, we're going to be manifesting our professional astrologers diploma program in the next 24-hour period. And if you want to join us for a free class, Oraculos, we give away lots and lots of stuff for free. If you want to join us for a free weekend so that you can see just exactly what we have cooking in our Oraculos machine, then please go to our website. Somebody could put the link in the chat. Please go to our website to the upcoming events page and go and grab yourself a seat within our upcoming Professional Astrologers Diploma Program free open house, which is going to be tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I will put the link in the chat myself so that you cannot say that I didn't put it there. So join us tomorrow for our free weekend where you can find out everything you need to know and also see how we deal or how I go about teaching professional astrology and professional astrologers. Tomorrow is going to be Tomorrow is going to be the great equalizer because when it comes to teaching anything, when it comes to pedagogy in general, I believe in starting from the beginning. But the reason why I call my book A Depth of Beginning in the Celestial Art is because the way how I approach teaching something from the beginning tends to be more than just the ABCs. And it's hard to explain outside of the context of you actually being there in that class yourself. So if you want to experience what a depth of beginning looks like at Oraculos, then please come and join us. One of my greatest pleasures, and I'm going to stop talking about this stuff in a minute, and we're going to go to the eclipse chart. But one of my greatest pleasures is when I go out in public with the students of Oraculos to an astrology conference. People always come up to me, people who are other astrologers, who are respected astrologers, they come up to me and they say, Michael, whatever you're doing at Oraculos, keep on doing it. Because I was just in a lecture and a couple of your students were there as well. And the most intelligent questions that came from the audience came from the Oraculos students. And the most intelligent answers that came from the audience came from the Oraculos students. I know that to be the truth. And I'm grateful that other people also have that experience as well. If you want to see why that is, then join us tomorrow in our free open house, signed the boss and CEO / the management. Now we're going to take a look at the eclipse chart, the lunar eclipse chart. I'm going to interpret it just because, but the reality is, like I said, we tend to prioritize the solar eclipse over the lunar eclipse in general. Now, taking a look at this chart, we see that I set this chart for September 17, 2004, 10:34, 13 p.m. EDT for Washington, D.C., because whenever we're setting a mundane chart, we have to set it for the location of that place, or the location, or the capital of that country. And so since Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States of America, we're setting this for Washington, D.C. In this chart, we have 9 degrees Gemini, 36 minutes rising, and that's saying to us that Mercury is ruling this ascendant, meaning that Mercury is representing the American people within this coming 6-month period. And here we have Mercury by the 5-degree rule in the 5th house. And so what that could indicate is that issues having to do with the 5th house, primarily having to do with children, are going to be of great importance to us within this next 6-month period. One of the things that we've noted from a medical astrology perspective is that particularly within the charts of women, the 5th house doesn't just have to do with children, but the 5th house has to do with a woman's reproductive potential and the female reproductive system in general, and the woman's ability to have children and to conceive in the first place. And so having Mercury in this house can indicate that within the next 6-month period, one of the major sources of emphasis for us is going to be topics surrounding reproductive health. Now, one of the things that I personally hate within an astrologer is when an astrologer simply parrots things that are already common knowledge, which is one of the reasons why I, really don't like reading celebrity charts. Somebody the other day asked me in our houses series, because as you all know, we're currently running a houses series on YouTube. Somebody asked me, I'm turning sideways because my foot is dead.
somebody, and I don't mean dead. I mean like just, anyway, it's on the process of death. Somebody asked me whether or not I would be interested in putting up celebrity charts with the houses series so that people could see how it manifests in the charts of celebrities. And my darling heart, no, I will not. And the reason for that is because I think that one of the most lackluster expressions of astrology is the astrology of looking at celebrity charts. It's something I've never done. It's something I never intend to do because I'm far more interested in looking at your chart. I'm far more interested in working with real people who have the ability to give us their real life stories than looking at the chart of any celebrity. So, no, thank you to that. Also, another reason why I think that that's potentially an erroneous way to go. Bring me back on the screen, Anna, so I can cook for a little bit. Another reason why I think that that's an erroneous way to go is because my foot is really dead. My foot is entering the ninth ring of hell at this moment. I've never felt a dead foot as dead as mine right now. I really want to scream, but I'm keeping myself together. Anyway, one of the things about astrology in general that is a problem with in astrology, and the problem is the people who teach astrology, really. It's not the astrology never did anything to anybody. The problem is the people who set themselves in positions to teach astrology, is that we overemphasize the placement of things. And in the houses series, I gave certain pointers regarding the placement of things within the signs, not the signs, but within the 12 houses. And I feel okay with that because I feel like you, as an astrologer or astrologers, should be able to take that into context of the entire chart. The most important thing that will ever happen within a chart is action. And action is only ever indicated by aspects. So I started this houses series, and in the houses series, we saw this theme of talking about this planet in this house and this planet in the next house. And after we started our houses series, other people chose to start their houses series because that just seems to be my fate in this lifetime. That whenever I do something at the Oraculos School of Astrology on my tiny incy wincy platform, people on much larger platforms take that same idea and do the exact same thing to their bajillion million situation. Anyway, so now other people have started with the houses series because it's a good idea. It's a great idea. And following the same theme of planets in the houses using celebrity charts. But it's a bit of a problem because when we talk like that as astrologers, we stupidify ourselves. And I also take responsibility for being a part of the problem. But I hope that I'm also a part of the solution when I say to you that the placement of a planet in a house means diddly squat if you're not also taking into consideration what that planet is doing within the rest of the chart. What are the aspects that that planet is receiving? What are the other houses that planet might be ruling? How do those aspects impact that planet's ability to act within the chart in which it's located? That's a different level of astrology that we can't put in a 15-minute houses video, but the hope or the intention is that us as astrologers are dealing with a full deck, and that we have the ability to take what is said in the video into context and know that we have to juxtapose that information against much more technical astrological skills, such as saying, if you have, for example, if you have, what is it? If you have Saturn within the seventh house, and that might indicate that, okay, in this lifetime, the relationship side of things might be one of your greatest challenges within this lifetime. What else is that Saturn ruling? Is the Saturn ruling your 10th house? Is it saying that when you look at your marital partner, you see the face of your mother, and therefore that's why the marriage is so difficult? Is the Saturn ruling the 5th house? Is that saying that your children are more associated with your marital partner than they are with you? Maybe you didn't even want to have children. Maybe the fact that you have children is because your marital partner wanted children and not you. Is the Saturn ruling your 6th house? Is that indicating that your marital partner is a source of stress, but also a source of physical sickness within your life? Has your partner gotten you sick, whether that's sick because of an STD or whether that's sick because of something else? Has your partner contributed not just to your stress, but also your sickness? We have to understand the larger context of all of these things so that we can make things make sense within the context of our astrological practice. Because, yes, saying Saturn in the seventh house is nice for certain things, but a lot of people have shitty relationships and they don't have Saturn in the seventh house. So then, how do we interpret that? We have to know all of the things as astrologers. As astrologers, we have to know everything about our field. Now I'm done. So, bringing back the eclipses chart onto the screen, we thank you, Tony. Yes, let me cook. Now, bringing back the eclipses chart on the screen, we have we have the Mercury in the fifth house. I got on that rant because I was saying I hate when astrologers say things that are already public knowledge. We know that at this moment, female reproductive rights are a major topic issue, and it definitely was a big topic issue the other night in the debate situation. We know that it's a big issue. And so here we see the astrological indications that it will continue to be a big issue, this topic of female reproductive rights over the course of the next 6 months, because we have Mercury ruling the ascendant, representing the people and the things that people care about in the fifth house. Furthermore, we have Mercury ruling both the ascendant as well as ruling the fifth house. We know within traditional astrology that there's this rule that says that if a planet is ruling more than one house, then the significations of both those houses are brought together within our idea of that planet. Therefore, this Mercury is ruling both the people and the children of the people, which says that in this next 6 month people, both the people and their children and the people and their ability to have children is going to be of major importance within the hearts of the American people within this coming 6 month period. Now, another thing that would have already indicated that for us is the fact that within this chart, we are also having the eclipse taking place within this fifth house. We have the Sun at 25 degrees of Virgo, and it's a partial eclipse, but it's an eclipse all the same. We have the Sun at 25 degrees Virgo and the Moon at 25 degrees of the next one of Pisces, and that's where the eclipse is taking place. And so, just as in what is the other chart? In the solar eclipse chart, the house in which the eclipse is taking place is going to be the major source of is going to be the major source of interest or impact or crisis within that year. We see this eclipse is taking place within the fifth house and the 11th house. The 11th house has to do with how government and how the Senate and how the cabinet is making legislation. So legislation is going to be a big topic, and the ways in which legislation is impacting children within the country of the United States of America is going to be a big topic as a result of this eclipse happening between the fifth house of children, as well as our reproductive abilities in general, and the 11th house, which has to do with the legislation as well as the funds of the government. The money of the king is symbolized by the 11th house and the legislation surrounding what occurs to that money. So that's what we're seeing with this eclipse, a big, big reproductive story going on over here. Now, one of the things that's problematic about this chart is that all of this is happening conjunct the Neptune. And that conjunction to the Neptune is problematic because the conjunction to the Neptune is saying that all of us are confused within this coming period of time. All of us are operating under Bhranti Darshana. Bhranti Darshana is having to do with incorrect knowledge within Vedic philosophy. Bhranti Darshana is one of the things that darkens the heart. And Bhranti Darshana says that we are operating under the wrong worldview in relationship to these topics. So this could indicate that we're operating under the wrong worldview at this time in general for the next 6-month period. And as a result of that, we find ourselves making mistakes based on us not having correct knowledge. And that isn't just an American situation, that is a global situation as a result of the fact that the eclipse is a global phenomenon. On the note of Neptune, this also is having to do with, what is the other thing this is having to do with? We note within this chart, the sun is ruling the fourth house, and we note that
the Neptune is a malefic planet because Neptune destroys by water. When we have the sun or any planet ruling the fourth house in opposition with the Neptune, it can have to do with water damage to property. So one of the things that we might be finding coming up within this next 6 month period as well is water damage being done to property, to people's physical properties. Maybe there's going to be topics of flooding. We're not really outside of hurricane season. Hurricane season ends in November. If you're from the Caribbean, you grew up knowing that hurricane season ends in November. So this could possibly be indication of more malefic weather on the horizon, and that malefic weather possibly causing flooding or some sort of natural disaster regarding real estate. Why do we say that? Not because my ancestors told me, not because my spirit guides told me, because neither your ancestors nor your spirit guides have anything to do with astrology. Because the chart told me. The chart has the ruler of the fourth house in opposition with Neptune. Therefore, if the fourth house is the house of real estate and Neptune is the planet that represents water damage, you don't have to be a genius to know that that means water damage to real estate. That is, a lot of the times when I give readings, blind chart readings in particular, and sometimes I get it wrong because sometimes every astrologer gets it wrong because we all interpret things based on our own filters in life. So no astrologer is going to be 100% correct all the time. But as far as correct is concerned, I have a pretty high batting average. And for that, I'm very grateful because I know that that is a blessing. I could have been a very different person. But that high batting average, for me, it's just a common sense thing because we're looking at a chart and we're not doing anything intuitive. We're not doing anything psychic. It's not a psychic reading. It's not a palm reading. It's not a dream interpretation. You're looking at a language, and the language is my fourth house ruler represents real estate. It's in opposition with Neptune. What does that mean? It means water damage to my real estate. It's very, very simple. Astrology is very, very simple. We make it difficult when we start to bring in our angels and our ancestors and our Babalaos and Elegua and all of these things. It doesn't need all of that. Now, moving on from this combination, let's talk about what's rising within this chart. Because within anybody's chart, when you have something rising, it represents that that thing can be a rising theme within your life. So very often in the charts of women who are having reproductive health issues, we find often the ruler of the fifth house rising within their chart. One, that can just mean that children are very important to me in general. But as astrologers, when you say that statement, you have to realize that you've done 25% of the work. Where's the other 75%? The other 75% is in asking yourself the question why, which is why I always tell my students at Oraculos, in order to be a great astrologer, you have to, yes, say something definitively, but you also have to follow up that definitive statement with the question why, because the question why make it the astrologer. It isn't sufficient to just tell somebody children are going to be important to you in this lifetime. Whoop-de-doo, Basil. My grandmother could have said that. And my grandmother, bless her heart, she's not an astrologer, but my grandmother could have said that. So we see this Jupiter rising within this chart. We have to say, why is this important? What does Jupiter rule within this chart? In general, we know that Jupiter is ruling aspirations and hopes. In general, we know that this Jupiter in detriment isn't good for the aspirations or the hopes of nobody. Because if the Jupiter is in detriment, that means that Jupiter is coming with wishful thinking. Jupiter is coming not necessarily having all of its ducks in a row. So this could symbolize that the people of this country at this time are under the influences of wishful thinking that isn't actually grounded in actual reality. We already knew that nobody would be grounded in reality as a result of this eclipse taking place in the conjunction with Neptune, but this is further corroboration. Corroboration. This is further corroboration of that which we already know. Because as astrologers, it isn't sufficient for us to just say something one time. We have to find multiple things within the chart to say that thing. But the good thing about astrology is that we don't even have to search far for those multiple things, because if a chart wants to say something, it's going to say it in multiple ways. The chart has told us that we're all going to be the emperor without clothes, thinking that we're all looking like $1,000. And the Jupiter is saying that we're all operating under wishful thinking. So there we go. Now, the problem with this for me personally,
As I hear myself saying the problem, the problem, the problem, I realize that I have become my friend. But the problem with this Jupiter rising is that this Jupiter is ruling the seventh house. The seventh house has to do with our foreign allies. One of the things that is significant about what happened on October 7th, and I think also previously in terms of the Russia-Ukraine war, is that within the mundane chart for those years, there was always this theme of the foreign allies on the rise, which means that this year, the foreign allies of this country are a primary concern for this country, which is a bit of a problem, because how do the concerns of your foreign allies become that much greater than your own concerns, that becomes the primary rising theme for you within this coming year, is the question, or within this coming 6-month period. But this says that the foreign allies are on the rise and they become the primary theme within this coming period, which can be nice, save for the fact that in this chart, we see that the part of fortune is over here within the seventh house. The part of fortune is always going to be a proxy for your money. I've heard lots of things regarding what the part of fortune symbolizes, in just as much the same way as I've heard lots of things regarding what the quincunx symbolizes, because everybody has ideas about the part of fortune and the quincunx. They're things that beget ideas, I think. However, the part of fortune at its basic foundation is money. And the quincunx at its basic foundation is dislike. Dislike. Sorry if you can't hear me, I don't have a voice. The part of fortune means money. So not only are the affairs of my foreign allies, ruler of the seventh house, rising for me within this coming 6-month period, but my money is in the pocket of my foreign allies, which says that there can be a theme in this coming 6-month period of the foreign ally receiving more of the money of the people of the United States of America, which isn't really a nice thing in the world, particularly when we go and we take a look at the state of that money, the money of the people. When we go to the second house within this next 6-month period, we find that Mars is at 7 degrees Cancer, 47 minutes in the second house of money. What does Mars rule? Mars is ruling the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of all of the ways in which we shoot ourselves in the foot. And so how are we shooting ourselves in the foot? Nationally within this next 6-month period? Financially. Once again, my ancestors didn't tell me, the chart told me. We're shooting ourselves in our foot financially within this next coming 6-month period. The ancients tell us something interesting about having Mars in the second house. The ancients say if Mars is in the second house with no reason for being in the second house, it will burn a hole through your pocket. The only reason Mars has to be in the second house is if Mars is the actual ruler of the second house. Definitely not if Mars is in the sign of his fall. Therefore, this can be a very financially taxing period that we're entering under the rays of this eclipse within the next 6-month period. And I keep on referencing the 6-month period because that is the interval between eclipses. Now, once again, you heard me say that we don't primarily prioritize the lunar eclipse in general. So there's a very large part of this, which is for information purposes only, because our real predictive measure when it comes to traditional astrology is going to be the solar eclipse. However, since I know that many people are going to be looking at the lunar eclipse, I feel it necessary to at least give you information regarding what it signifies. Because usually eclipses, they serve as a means of emphasizing each other, basically. So we're looking at the partial lunar eclipse. And so we believe that the next eclipse, the solar eclipse, will simply be a means of emphasizing that which was already told. So we have Mars in the second house burning a hole through the pockets of the people, which is kind of crazy. You know why? Why is it burning a hole through the pockets of the people? It's also in the quincunx with the part of fortune in the seventh house, meaning that it's because of financial insobriety on the part of the government that that hole is being burned through a pocket of the national, whatever, of the national piggy bank. So it's a bit of a challenge, and it's something that we want to be mindful of. It's something that we're more than likely going to hear being mentioned on the news within the coming period of time. Now, when we look at this further, we see that the people of America at this time, we have the people represented by Mercury, because Mercury is ruling the first house. They're in a square relationship with the foreign ally. So you mean to tell me you are rising as my greatest point of consideration in the next 6 month period, and the two of us are in a square relationship with each other? How does that work? I don't know. But this is looking like somebody biting the hands that feeds it. So the American people are concerned with the foreign ally, giving money to the foreign ally, and they're still in a square relationship with each other, which is looking like the hand being bitten, which is the hand that's feeding. So that could also be a part of that. Now, we might say, why? Oh, why does the money of the people have to go to support the foreign ally within this period of time? We can see the answer once again from the chart. Because when you ask yourself the question why and force yourself to answer that question why, you will find that the answer is readily available. The Mercury is in opposition with the Saturn. Saturn is ruling the eighth house within this chart, which is saying that, what is it saying? It's saying that the debts of my foreign allies are in direct opposition with me. And it's an applying opposition, which means this is something that will continue to hold momentum over the next 6 month period. It's saying the financial status of my foreign allies is in direct opposition with me. And as a result of that, that's why I find myself in the state that I'm in, financially speaking, basically. Not only is the Mercury ruling the not only is the Saturn ruling the eighth house, but the Saturn is also ruling the ninth house of international affairs, which is saying that international affairs are working against the American people within this coming 6 month period. It's the relationship with the international that is fundamentally working against the people of this country in this coming 6 month period. And Saturn is also ruling the 10th house, which is the house of the government, the king, the president. And it's saying that the president is also in opposition with the people. Isn't that crazy to have the president represented by the Saturn at 15 degrees Pisces retrograde in opposition with the Mercury, which is ruling the Mercury, which is ruling the people. So there's this fundamental sense of the people being against the rulership and the rulership being against the people. And probably that's having to do with things that are being revealed over the next 6 month period regarding what is actually happening as far as money is concerned and as far as the money of the people is concerned. So these are very big themes that we want to be mindful of and that we want to keep top of our consciousness as we dive into the 6 month period ahead. And I'll have more checkups and updates to share with you as we continue to go forward. The more you look at this chart, it's like the more you look, the more you see. The more you look, the more you see indeed, as far as this chart is concerned. I think another thing that's interesting, I live in Boston where they just found those killer mosquitoes. And another thing that's interesting in this chart is that Venus is ruling the sixth house, which is the house of sickness, as we all know. And Venus is in a square relationship with the Pluto. And once again, Pluto means abnormal growth, abnormal functioning, abnormal everything. So the Venus square Pluto could signify that there is some abnormal story surrounding sickness within this coming 6 month period, some abnormally large or some abnormally traumatic story regarding sickness and things that ail us within this coming 6 month period. We would think that this Venus is in the sixth house as a result of the 5-degree rule, but this Venus is actually in the fifth house because Venus is 2 minutes too far from the 5-degree rule applying to her. So this might either have to do with sickness regarding children, or it can also have to do with issues of sickness or issues of stress or issues of public health concern regarding reproductive health in general. But these things are becoming abnormally emphasized within this next 6 month period, which is a further corroboration of what we already thought would be true based on the fact that we saw the sun of the eclipse present within the fifth house for Washington, D.C. within this eclipse chart. Hopefully this was a worthwhile endeavor down Eclipse Lane for you. I sincerely hope that you got something from this. And if you find out information that is supportive of anything that I've said on today's broadcast, please let us know in the chat box. Please let us know down below so that we can all grow together. Thank you so much thank you so Tony said he doesn't love that the sun is applying to the Neptune either. Applying aspects have to do with things that are going to be continuous in the future. So if you have an applying square between you and your spouse within your chart, that represents that the issue between you and your spouse isn't going to be something that happened in the past and then it's over. It's going to represent that that issue has a constant sense of momentum around it. And so that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking at within this coming 6-month period of the eclipse. Thank you all so much for being here today and for joining me on this. I'm not really feeling 100%, but I'm really, really happy to be in the presence of all of you. You mean the world to me. I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for you. And I'm so grateful and so humbled and so happy to be able to share a space with all of you here on the Oraculos podcast. I was told recently, and it wasn't a bad telling. I think it was a constructive piece of feedback, that at Oraculos we need to clarify who our audience is, And for me, I've never really been high on the marketing situation. I have a degree in marketing. I have a degree in journalism, and I emphasize in marketing and French. But all the same, I've never been high on doing that for myself. I could help you with your own marketing woes. I can't help myself with my own. And so as a result of that, I thought that it was just a given that the work that we do was meant to support the astrological community. Because it is, it is to a very large degree. But apparently, we have to get more specific than that. So one of the suggestions was that we start doing only horary astrology. And another suggestion was that we start doing only mundane astrology. And another suggestion of that was that we start doing only natal astrology so that we can further clarify what we do at Oraculos. But I don't like those boxes because in India, we don't go to the Indian astrologer and say, hey, you only do horary astrology, because in India, the Indian astrologer is a well-rounded astrologer. The Indians are the most well-rounded astrologers on this planet. The Indian astrologer is a horary astrologer, a natal astrologer, a synastry astrologer, an electional astrologer, a mundane astrologer, a medical astrologer, a witchcraft removal astrologer. The Indian astrologer is a force to be reckoned with. And I want to be the Western equivalent of that. And I do believe that I have largely brought myself to being the Western equivalent of that. So no, I don't just want to talk to you about horary astrology on the Oraculos podcast. I don't just want to talk to you about mundane astrology. I want to feel as if there is a place within this world for the work that we do at Oraculos, teaching all astrology within the context of Western astrology. And to that end, that is what this work is about. And I sincerely hope that you are enjoying it. I sincerely hope that you enjoy coming and spending time with me, because I definitely enjoy coming and spending time with you. And if you haven't had enough of me and my half of a voice, which isn't even really a voice, then please tomorrow come and join us for our free open house. Another thing that I thought, because astrologers are very tingsy people. In the Bahamas, we have this word tingsy, which means you like new stuff. And I am also not the best at naming things. So I named that class FOCA maybe 10 years ago. And it's continued to be called FOCA until this day, the Foundations of Classical Astrology. And the name is a misnomer because it causes people to think that, oh, this is such a foundational course, I don't need it because I already know this. But it's incorrect. It's Branti Darshana. It's once again false information, because my version of a foundations course is very, very different. It's differently different, and you've never experienced anything like it in your entire life, so help you God. So next year, when we do this foundations course for the very last time, because after that 2026, September 2026, I'm going to be in medical school and I'm going to give Oraculos over to the students of Oraculos to run. Hopefully they don't run it into the ground. But next year, when we run this course, I'm going to name it the name of my first book,
Mastering Traditional Astrology, because truthfully, that's what this course should be named. It's a 14-week course to master traditional astrology and all the things that you need in order to set yourself up for a lifetime of excellence within astrological practice. It's what we do well. It's what I do well. And the proof is in the pudding. So I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. I love you all so much. I really, really do. I'm so grateful that you're here. Be well in the universe. Practice great astrology. Make our ancestors proud. Make your ancestors proud. And I will continue to show up for you until the day I die. So help me God, because this is the fulfillment of my natal promise. And hopefully it's also the fulfillment of yours. TTYL in the universe, and in the words of one of my favorite astrologers in the world, Christine Skinner, I love you, but I gotta leave you.